we've got Bird on deck.
Hey, what's happening?
What's going on, man?
Oh, looking forward to it. Friday night. It's going to be a good one.
Mr. Tom, how's it going?
Going good. Trying to get all my watching set up while we record.
What's
Might as
all
well
your...
throw SmackDown on.
Oh, yeah. We've got a fourth party.
Oh,
Challenger has arrived.
yes.
Fourth Horseman.
The apocalypse has arrived. What's going on, man?
What's happening?
We're ready
Hey.
for you. Dick dancing and prancing all over town.
I'm
Hey,
not the only
6'4"
one
and
with a
hung to the
crazy
floor.
accent.
Figures my episode to jump in.
Yeah, probably. All right, you guys want to do this thing?
Let us
There you
go.
go.
Welcome to this episode of the Prestige-ish Media Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Lake, 5'9", with a thick, long, girthy, swinging vine. And my co-host this evening, first, we've got a new co-host, Josh Goff. Josh, how's it going this evening?
Man, fantastic.
How long have you known these other two knuckleheads?
Oh, goodness. Since mid-90s, I think.
Good gosh. Were they allowed to within 200 feet of you at that time? Or we also have the Birdman here, Ed Boggess. How's it going?
Doing great, and I'd like to let everybody know it's birthday week for Blaha, so happy birthday
Oh, yeah,
again.
it's the even
1 year older. Yeah.
they're both featured on the new Dateline movie. So we're going to be talking about Unreal episode 3 of season 3, and then we'll get to the meat of it, if you will, which is the Renegade episode of Dark Side of the Ring. But we'll start with Unreal. It is season 3, episode 3, Rise and Rumble, I think. Initial thoughts and a rating for you, Bird.
Both of these episodes, I won't give my dark side rating yet, but I enjoyed both of these a lot, so I'm looking forward to this week. Unreal, I'm giving a solid 8.
Okay. Tom, what about you?
For Unreal, I'll give it a 7. It was a mixed episode, but for the most part, I liked it.
Hood, I know you had to cram this yesterday for us to put you off a day, but what did you make of Unreal, and have you watched much of it, season 1, 2, or 3, and where are you at overall in this episode?
Yeah, so actually, this was the first episode I think I've ever seen of Unreal.
Okay.
So when it comes to giving it a score, like, I don't really have a good frame of reference, so just guess I can't put it up against other episodes, having not seen them, although it was pretty interesting, so I think I'll probably go back and start watching them now. But probably a 6 to a 7.
Okay. Yeah,
I would say would be my score.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I've got it maybe about a 7.5, but it's a 7.5 for this show. You know what I mean? In the context of other episodes. I still think the timeline is really wonky because we go to the Rumble build up. We go back to Seth Rollins' injury, which we know that had to have been surgery right after the event. We talk about Braun Breaker in the Rumble, but then we're back to him at Survivor Series. So once again, last episode ended with Cena, which was in December. So I just think they at least need to put timestamps on when they're throwing us all around, because it is like a Royal Rumble number generator. The Braun Breaker of it, I guess I'll address all together. So they're discussing, and we don't know, once again, we've talked, Josh, on previous episodes about, is this 70% real and 30% unreal, or what is this? The Braun Breaker conversation, I am assuming, is a real conversation they had, but the conversation we watched seemed somewhat staged. But with that said, like, we know the person that actually won the Rumble is somebody that they shoved down our throats 10 years before this, and they're arguing whether to shove Braun Breaker down our throats. But I think by the time the Rumble happens and they don't address it here, didn't he have to have somewhat of that injury from Survivor Series still lingering, or a question? Because I think he was a quick in and out. Do you remember what happened there, Bird? And any takes on, because Braun Breaker ended up returning at Mania. We haven't really got to the meat and potatoes of his injury, but it seemed like something happened. 1, at Survivor Series, 2, quick out at the Rumble. We don't see him till Mania, so I think that all kind of ties together, but they don't address it here.
Yeah, again, here we are with timelines, and I think they just skirted over the Rumble. We knew he was hurt, and I think he's a guy that would, unless he was majorly hurt, he's going to try to be out there just due to his family and due to his demeanor. but again, they didn't touch on that. And just some other topics that we'll get to. They're going with one segment, and then out of nowhere, you're in a different month with a different couple or a different person. So it's a little wonky again, timeline wise. But again, I think each episode has gotten better as far as basing it on the Unreal guideline.
Anything for you this episode on Braun Breaker?
I think maybe he was legit hurt, and they asked him if they wanted to cover it, and he didn't want them to be that part of his private life, maybe just by what we know about him, I'm thinking.
Yeah, we'll see that. I'm thinking maybe it comes in another episode. We get a more vision centered episode. But yeah, I don't know exactly. And then the other question is, how hurt was he at Survivor Series? Because if you remember, Seth said he was fine, went over Cody, then he's injured. Braun's getting ready to pin CM Punk, and then he doesn't leave, goes over. So I wonder how much of that plays in. Any thoughts on Braun Breaker from you this episode? Josh, not a ton from him, from your context in it, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, no, nothing really specifically those guys haven't already touched on. A lot of that time period you guys were talking about, I wasn't watching anyway, so I don't really have a lot of point of reference from that Survivor Series on to Rumble. I just thought the whole story was interesting, coming in sight unseen, if you will. A look behind the scenes. I'm all in on Braun Breaker, except for the Breaker name. I wish they'd go away from that, whatever. But it's just good to see anything behind the scenes. The story on Braun, give me all the Braun content. Yeah.
And for reference, we're all in a wrestling group chat together. And I don't know if it was you. I assume it was you who made the Brock Breaker segment yesterday for the other Steiner brother. But I do definitely think Brock Breaker would be pretty good. That would be enough to put me over on Braun. And I think by now, it's been so long, I'm so used to the name now. The first few months, it was maybe a little weird, but at this point, it's almost weird for me to think of him any other way, even though he screams Steiner when you hear his voice. We got the Seth surgery and Becky watching. I thought this was a good look into Becky. I give her a lot of credit for being more of herself here. I thought it was pretty endearing to her as a human. I thought she looked great without makeup. I thought it was interesting. She was like gross. She wanted nothing to do really with watching the surgery. As a fellow gingerhood, any thoughts here on Becky or the Seth surgery? Are you a big fan of watching surgeries? Could you watch the surgery shows or whatever?
Yeah, I could. I don't necessarily seek them out, but I'm not super squeamish either. But for her being so boisterous about being the man, it is a little surprising to see her be so squeamish and not want any part of seeing what was not even really a super grotesque looking surgery, I wouldn't think. But hey, everyone's got their fears, whatever. Yeah.
What about you, Tom? Are you watching any surgeries?
Josh said I'm not looking out for them, but I could watch it. But was it Becky that made the comment? It's like cutting into a chicken or something like that.
Oh, geez. I'm going to guess, Bird, you can't like watching surgeries, can you?
I'm sure there are people. A couple of things you touched on.
He's the one who watches death matches, so yes,
that's very true. Yeah, but I don't seek out surgeries like Derek, Josh, whatever we're calling here. Our little note, kind of a funny note. Can regular bums like us watch a surgery? If Whitney got surgery, can I just all pop in? I know I can't, but I like that to ask her what she was able to see. And again, I'll jump on your no makeup, thumbs up with no makeup.
Yeah, very brief, funny story. But when I was 15, I had a hernia that turned into something else. And everybody was looking at my privates that day. And as they were wheeling me into surgery, they're like, go get, they're going to want to see this. And I'm like, 15, first time the whole world seen my junk. So that was a fun time. We got a little bit of Trick and Lash Legend, not a ton other than they got engaged. Once again, the elephant thing seemed pretty staged. If anything, I give them credit for not overly having cameras present for the engagement, because that seems to be in the time period of when this show was. How do you feel? Have you seen much of Trick Williams yet, Josh? And any take on the elephant pissing? Anything else you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I jotted down a couple notes, and that was one of the things that I wrote down was like, I don't know if this whole segment's really necessary. I don't know that it adds a ton to the story otherwise. When talking about the score, I would give it that 6 to 7 without any context up against other episodes. It was like part of it was that segment, like the episode, it's like they crammed a lot of different storylines into the period. And that was one I was like, maybe we could have left at least part of that on the cutting room floor. But whatever. It's a good talking point. Here we are talking about it. So I guess it had some value.
I don't know that we needed the full length of piss. They could have gone piss, black screen, piss 5 minutes later. I don't know that we needed the full thing. Tom, any thoughts on Trick or the elephant pissing?
The pissing needed that SpongeBob meme a few moments later.
Yeah, something. Good gosh.
But yeah, that's part of the show that the segment was. And for me, I thought it was more of a total diva segment.
Yeah, I buy that.
Yeah, but it was good just to see them part of their background and how they're getting together, getting married, and all that. But other than that, I didn't really need to see it. I mean, that could be a whole different show by itself.
Just the pissing? What show are you watching, Tom?
It was African.
Bird, what about you? How did you feel about that, or just Trick and Lash overall?
I'm probably on the opposite end of Blaha there. I wrote a little star. That was the MVP segment, not the elephant segment. I think they're good together. Trick, coming from football, he markets himself really well. I think he's a star. I think they're good together on TV. I think him being with her, of course, they're together in real life, obviously ups her game a little bit as well. But again, definitely total divas vibe, but I enjoyed seeing them together. Seemed like they're fairly genuine as far as Unreal can be.
Yeah, I think it's how you rate her. It's like if you're going to compare Lash Legend to like Charmel, if you're going to do Trick and Lash versus Charmel and Booker, like Lash is obviously has a lot more gravitational pull, I guess I would say. But I don't know Lash compared to the rest of the women's roster that I'm as high on her that way. But as a package, I think maybe they're maybe a little bit more formidable that way as well.
A little bit of small, since we're all kind of somewhat rap fans, and Derek's near that area. They mentioned Al Capone from Memphis. I watch Memphis wrestling every week, and he's been on their show, so that's kind of just a real neat. I don't know how big of a deal he is in the grand scope of things, but for Trick to mention that, and apparently he got a phone call from him or whatever, it's kind of neat.
Josh, do you have any whoop that trick history for us or Al Capone?
Not that I can tell on the internet. No.
I will say for me, the highlight for many reasons was the Chelsea Green segment. One, big fan overall, obviously not bad on the eyes, but also I'm not like a huge Matt Cardona fan, but I don't dislike him and I like him more than I don't. I think they're a good couple. Another like Tales of the real uncensored. I did have Chelsea when I first moved to Florida on my Bumble or something. I did not get a right swipe, but I at least tried. But I think that was probably right around the time her and Matt were getting together. So sliding doors there.
Is that when she was the psychiatrist?
I think it was past Tough because I feel like Tough Enough was going on the year before I moved to Florida. So at that point, I think she was probably either in NXT or in one of her stints breaking her forearms 80 times or all the different things she's broken. Paisley, her dog, they don't mention it there, but her dog, I think, is pretty much like borderline blind. They adopted it almost blind. I don't know how it's progressed. So it's been a while since I've been on her social. I think in the previous season, we got the house being built. Is that true, Bird? Do you remember that? I showed the segment, and I think they might have showed it in the prior season. But anyway, we get to see the house completed. And I would just bring up in the context of this, Chelsea obviously won her first main women's championship. Last season, there was a comment from Michael Hayes about whether she was that type of wrestler or not. And so kind of cool, just the week we're covering it, the week she won the championship. Thoughts overall on Chelsea in that segment, Bird?
One shining point to her, I think she's number one, she's caring, but I think she's funny and giving enough to where they can make fun of her and she goes with it and knows that's part of the gig. And that seems to be what's kind of elevated her a little bit. I think Cardona, I like him, but I think he's a whole lot more carny. And it seems like to me, Chelsea's just being real and goofy and silly, but they do seem like they're a pretty good couple together. But I think he thinks a little highly of himself. Not that I dislike him, but I think she's more genuine on that end. But I really like her segment.
Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I like the segment. The whole, that Matt Cardona is a little bit corny, but him and Chelsea kind of work together with their corniness. And then the whole segment with Matt talking about his toys and all that was pretty funny.
Josh, thoughts from you there?
Yeah, same as those guys. Mostly, I thought it was a really good look into Chelsea as someone that doesn't know a whole lot about her. It was a good insight into her. I would say, oh, okay, now I'm more interested in what she's got going than I was prior to watching the episode. And yeah, I also did not know that her and Cardona were married. So
Okay.
seeing him on there, was like, oh, hey, look at that. There's Zack Ryder. Haven't seen him in a hot minute. But yeah, it was a fun segment. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it.
Nice that he's finally back, because I feel every time they've covered him before, it's like he's still there, like begging for a job almost. There's the infamous, I think it was the Kevin Owens segment on Cody's podcast, where he's like, for a guy that's king of the Indies, he sure asks for a job every time he gets a mic or something like that. So nice that you don't have to watch him like sulking without a job this go around. I did think the Tanner thing was disgusting. I thought what Matt was pitching, but he didn't quite get around on it, was like they could get together to bang and then go their separate ways. Is that what you thought was going on, Josh? What he was like, she didn't let him get it. Yeah. She didn't let him get it out, but I thought that's where he's going. And I don't think that's the worst of solutions to their situation.
Oh, it's actually pretty logical.
I mean,
he's come to. That's a good move.
If he was that gross, I would definitely be like separate beds. Bono may disagree, but I say separate beds. So we did get the Liv comeback, and then mentioning overall, this is a Saudi Rumble, the first Saudi Rumble. There was like the 40-man deal. We haven't done that in a while. I kind of missed that. No homo. But also it's just interesting with 30 women because of how they have to cover up for the matches. So if we remember the first Saudi event, no women. Second, women, like I think just 2, but covered. And now we've got a whole, this is the first, like the largest body of women in a match ever, I would think there. So just an interesting thing there. Happy to see Liv win. They made a mention that Lash got a lot of run in the Women's Rumble. I thought maybe for the first time, the Women's Rumble might have been better than the men's this year. And then second question for you guys, I think it's probably going to be all our favorite Rumbles, but if you have a different Rumble that's your favorite other than 92, let us know. Josh, first, did you watch this Rumble, and what did you think of the Women's Rumble, or what you saw of it from this episode?
Let's see. So I did watch the Rumble when it happened, but to be honest, there's nothing about that Women's Rumble that I really vividly remembered. I came in kind of cold, so I didn't know a lot of what was the build up to a lot of it. So I wasn't really looking for anything in particular. It was just happening in front of me. So no, not really a lot of insight on that Women's Rumble. I do think it was fairly entertaining for coming in kind of cold. I think the level of performance pretty good overall, but yeah, no great insight for me on that.
Do you have a favorite Rumble of all time?
Oh goodness, I did not come prepared for that question, man. No, not that I can think of immediately. Probably one from,
I would say it'd pick a Stone Cold.
Maybe like to mid to late 90s, early probably would have been in there, but I'm not really sure. I think maybe one of the ones where Brock comes in and throws everyone around. Those were fun.
Yeah, that's always a good laugh.
Yeah.
I think my favorite, like in the range you're talking about, Bird would be like awesome, but my favorite all time, just even with the Heenan commentary, and even just the whole event top to bottom, I feel like it's just too good. And then of the more recent ones, me and Tom were at the 2016 Rumble.
I was going to say that's my favorite Rumble.
When Roman Reigns did lose to Triple H,
because of
and there was this little kid with a glove who was crying. And it made me and Tom so happy to see this miserable little
Even
kid.
His dad was kind of laughing too.
Yeah.
Is that Orlando?
Yeah, and this Rumble kind of reminds me of that, because you've got a guy that definitely didn't need to win the Rumble going over on the men's side. Bird, your thoughts on the Women's Rumble, and then do you have a favorite Rumble overall?
First off, I just like how they detailed like the backstage. Everybody, we all love the Rumble. Whether they hype it up big that year, every year it's big, but we're all tuned in. Whether you watch for every single episode or if you're just kind of new to the game, you're going to be tuned into the Rumble. Again, Liv, every episode she's coming off fantastic, I think. Again, she's a star. Again, she came off early this episode. Homer picked that 92 Rumble was kind of by itself, just star power alone, plus the Heenan element. I'm a Flair guy. It's hard to argue that for me, but late 90s eras would probably be my next pick, somewhere in that range, I would say, more so than current. Not that I dislike current.
So obviously Roman Reigns wins. They do not mention Royce Keys at all. We do get Brock eventually eliminating Oba, which once again, coming for full circle to where we are the second. Oba just finishing his big feud with Brock the week we're recording this, and Brock just retiring. So that's a cool bookend. But Oba Femi himself, Bird, where do you stand on him? And then just your thoughts on the men's side of the Rumble. For me, Roman winning, insane. I don't mind when an existing star wins occasionally, but I also like the event as something to put over a star. And I just think it's something that Roman doesn't need at this point. Your take?
Spot on. I don't think Roman needs it, but I'm also a gigantic Roman fan. I wasn't disliking that, but I don't think it elevated anybody else. Not that it was a major thumbs down as far as that goes. I was happy he won. Again, I'm a big Roman guy. But as far as Oba, I think seemed like he's listens very well. Seems like the game that Triple H plays, no pun there, seems like he's a pretty good mentor to him. And I think Oba seems like he cares, doesn't have a big head yet, at least to what we see on TV. A little slow burn. So I think Oba's presented himself well and carries himself well.
And we did get a little coverage going in, I think, of like the Cena event and going back to the women's Rumble for a half step. The ending with Liv, Tiffany, and Sol Ruka for me, I don't know how you get any better on my end from a women's Rumble. So that might be weighing my rating a little. Tom, your thoughts on the men's Rumble and Oba Femi overall?
I thought the segment with the men's Rumble was pretty neat. Just seeing how Triple H talking to Oba before he goes out, because he knows how big of a star that he's going to be. I thought that was pretty neat. I don't know how genuine Triple H is when he's talking like that, but it is unreal, so we'll take it for what it is. But as Oba Femi, as a wrestler, though, I think he's going to be huge. Like Bird said, slow burn, but they're doing it the right way. First thing with Brock, and then looks like he's got something going on with Braun Breaker next, maybe. So that could be something.
Yeah, the way he's being booked, though, it's like I personally wish they would have booked Braun Breaker this way, and they didn't. But here we are. Your thoughts on the men's Rumble and Oba, Josh?
Yeah, I think you nailed it earlier with your take on Roman. I don't know that it really did. It didn't do anything for me, and I don't know that it did a lot for anybody. Roman did not need that. Someone else, they could have really used the opportunity to do something with somebody else there. If you can always stick Roman in wherever you need to get him in, seemed like a little bit of a wasted opportunity. Heyo, teed that up for you real nice. But yeah, but the Oba segment, I thought that was really good. Coming in, like I'd never watched any of his NXT work. Like I'd really only seen him Rumble, Mania, SummerSlam, just those brief few spots because I've been largely checked out. So I'm coming in kind of sight unseen. I don't really know who Oba Femi is. I just know he's got the rocket ship strapped to him, and I didn't fully get why. Yeah, he's big, he looks the part, right? But in what little bit I'd seen, it was like, what do they see in this guy that separates him so much? Because just watching a match here, a match there, it's like, what differentiates him from 2014 Rusev? Oh, he's a big monster, great, whatever, but didn't really do a ton for me. It didn't seem, there was nothing like, wow, this guy's got the it factor. He's got a little goofy strut, great. But after seeing the episode and getting a little bit of insight, oh, I can now see a little bit of what Triple H is talking about, at least see why he might think that this is the trajectory, this is where this guy's going. So at least having seen that gives me some belief that maybe there is really something to this guy, and it's not going to be a major push for 8 months to a year and then fizzle out and just be another long line of Rusev, Braun Strowman, whatever. Maybe he really has some legit star power and can last for a while. So yeah. I'm curious now. I'm interested to see where he goes from here.
Yeah, and I might compare him even to Ryback, if that makes sense. Yeah. And that's just never been my thing. Even a Batista wasn't my thing at all. I would say he's probably got a better attitude than Ryback does. And then if you think of, and I almost think he does the Pearl River plunge or a version of it. But obviously to me initially, Ahmed Johnson was like one of the first people that jumped out. Just little bit similar physiques. He's a little bit bigger, but maybe not as muscular as Ahmed was in his prime. He's not stuffing sausages down the side of his trunks like old Ahmed was. But yeah, it hasn't been for me. But once again, Goldberg wasn't for me. These aren't my type of wrestlers. Kane, none of these guys really did much for me, but we'll just have to see where it goes. And I think I like Roman, but I guess as we wrap up just this episode, I don't know that this run is doing much for him or for the company right now. Like, if you look at this full year, he won the Rumble. We're past SummerSlam. We're in the middle of the title run. I don't really see it going anywhere. Any thoughts from you there, Bird, or wrapping up this episode?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of tie it back to your Roman and Braun thought. To me, they would get Braun near that level, and then they keep pulling back. They get him near, keep pulling back. So that was a little frustrating. Not that he was Roman Oba level at this point, but I think you can get him near that cusp if you don't keep playing and messing around with him. But Roman at that time, again, even now, I like him a lot. Fans treat him as a face, but half of these storylines, half of them are heels. Sometimes he comes out as a heel. So it's just a little wonky on how they're presenting, but star-wise, he's coming out. He's not going to do anything to make himself look like an idiot, in my opinion.
For my money, I like Braun Breaker significant more than Oba Femi, and even Roman to that extent. Anything from you there, Tom, wrapping up?
For Roman, I think that they keep pushing him because the crowd still loves him. Like Bird said, they try and put him one way, but the crowd overtakes them just by saying he's the OTC. The higher ups, they got to go with what the crowd says because they listen to the fans, right?
Half empty stadium. Josh, any final thoughts from you?
No, I think I pretty much covered everything that I had to say about it.
What's been your WWE experience this year? You mentioned kind of into last year, you were kind of out of it. Seems like you're busier during the college football seasons. That's probably part of it, but what's your interest level been like this year overall in WWE?
It's been really low overall last couple few years, really. Yeah, we went to Mania together, in 22, I think. Stuck with it for a while after that, and then probably sometime 23 fell out. Had much stuff going on and got busy and just kind of lost touch with the product. And then I'd periodically check in. Like I usually would catch the big shows anyway, Mania, Rumble, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, and so forth, but largely lost touch with what's going on. And in the past year, I've caught most of the PLEs. I think there might have been a couple that I missed out on, but I probably haven't seen but a couple Raws. I'm just now in the last few weeks started to kind of get that interest rekindled a little bit. So a lot of what's going on, I have been completely in the dark on it, and it's all brand new to me. Like I said, I'd never seen Oba Femi. I didn't know who he was when he came out at the Rumble.
Yeah,
I got none of the best. So yeah, so it's all just a new age for me, and just kind of picking up and trying to see what's happening and catch up with what was going on with these guys before, and then figure out who these new talents are and how they all fit in.
Yeah, definitely seen you a little more active in the chat, which is always good. You've always got a few good one-liners in there. And with that, we'll get to the meat and potatoes of this episode. Season 7 of Dark Side of the Ring, episode 6, The Ultimate Fantasy, The Fall of Renegade. Josh, this got you watching. It got you here today. What were your thoughts on the episode? You got a rating? I don't really know your relationship, how much Dark Side you've watched, but where do you kind of come in on this episode?
Yeah, so I've seen, goodness, a few years ago I was watching every episode when they come out. Now there's been a couple seasons, last 2 or 3 years I probably haven't seen it all, but I do at least have a frame of reference on Dark Side. And to me, it was an above average episode, I thought, at least for me, because it was a story that I haven't heard, that I hadn't been beaten to death for me. It was actually new material. Like I remember the existence of the Renegade vaguely from back in the day, but I wasn't watching a lot of WCW at that time. I was a WWE guy. And so I didn't really have any recollection. I don't think I'd ever seen the guy perform. If I had, I didn't remember it 30 years later.
What performances are we talking about here?
Like I said, I'd never seen the guy perform. I didn't watch WCW. And I sure wasn't going to know what was down in Florida or wherever. But yeah, so it was good to see something, a new story to me, and a lot of insight. And it was crazy to me that, of course, they did a lot of wild stuff in WCW back in the day, but they booked this as such an obvious warrior. I saw someone call it the alternate warrior. Yeah, it's very
Okay.
fitting. And think that this was going to work. It was like, they tried to do fake Diesel, fake Razor, but seriously, expected
Yeah.
it to be a success. And it was like, holy cow, how did anyone in that room let that leave the room? Yeah, we're rolling with this. That's wild.
I have some theories on that. Gun to your head rating 1 to 10. What do you got on it?
Let's see. Let's go with a 7.5.
Okay. Tom, what about you? Your thoughts on this episode and rating?
I thought this episode was an 8. I thought I knew, like Josh, I knew of the Renegade. I've seen him before, didn't really remember much about him, but other than that, it was pretty cool just to hear about their whole background, just how they got to the point where they're at. I didn't know anything that happened to him after that stint in WCW, so it's cool just to get other people's perspectives about it. But yeah, I thought it was an 8.
Bird, what about you?
Hey, I'm excited for this one. When I think Dark Side, I want a pure circus, and this was just insanity. Boss Man was more of a documentary last week, and I enjoyed it. Like I said, I gave it a 6.5, and I usually don't rate too low. This one I give 8.5. Just the enjoyability, not that I enjoyed the demeanor of it, just the whole progression, a lot of new things we didn't know, and just the characters involved in it, which we'll talk about. I thought it was very entertaining. But yeah, what a wild ride.
Yeah, I've got it as an 8 as well. I thought this was the most Dark Side feel of the season, like the most true to what the show has been. I definitely have a good chunk of thoughts on the Renegade. I was a big Warrior guy, WWE guy too. So I already thought WCW is cheesy. Some of the big things for me early was WCW rolled credits back in the early 90s, which to me was crazy. We obviously see that now with WWE, but that was something WWE never did, and sports programming usually didn't do. And so I'm like, this is fake. They had the no clothesline over the top rope, which Warrior was a big clothesline over the top rope guy. So that was always lame to me. Yeah, wow. Was that a Bill Watts thing, Bird, or who had that rule in WCW?
Yeah.
Who was running that? I thought
that
was
Watts.
Yeah. And between those things, I was already whatever. So when I saw Renegade, I was just like, this is more cheesy bullshit. Now, obviously, there's the first few seconds when I'm watching as a Warrior fan being like, is this Warrior? But you could pretty much tell it wasn't. But if you remember from previous talks or previous different things, there's always the rumor that there was like 2 Ultimate Warriors or the real Ultimate Warrior died, which I generally knew my way around those rumors even back then. But at first he comes out, and the one thing they didn't cover on the show that I will mention is not only did they have all of the different rip-off types of gears that they had, but the theme was as close to a Warrior rip-off as you could get without being Warrior. It wasn't as good, but it was a Jimmy Hart's version of the Ultimate Warrior song.
They added in a couple of horns or something.
Yeah, and originally we see the picture that Bird has up there. To me, it wasn't really clear that there was ever an R, and he definitely didn't always have it on the arms. And so at first you're just seeing this tan guy. It almost wasn't like they showed his face a lot. It was pretty weird. The only other thing I'll mention, at that time, and if you think of I was surprised how long the Renegade had a job, because I only remember it being like a few month thing, but it was a 3-year thing somehow.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is, especially in the professional wrestling industry, but in life, I think the Ultimate Warrior broadened the use of the word ultimate at the time. And Vince obviously teased he was going to have the ultimate, I forget what it was, with the Ministry of Darkness or whatever. But like when somebody said ultimate in professional wrestling, you almost knew what they were hinting at. And a lot of times in the 90s, it definitely never ended up being the Warrior, but they like to make money off of his name. So anyway, just kind of interesting there. Recapping some of the characters, we've got Rick Wilson, who was Renegade himself. Arn Anderson, who I think is probably the highlight of the episode for all of us. Bird's Boy, Sinister Minister.
Yes.
We get Eric Henderson, his former Dick dancing instructor, or the lead Dick dancer. his ex-wife, Kimberly Morrison, who seemed like a fairly normal person. We get Bischoff, who seems like his job was more to defend this, possibly, and shift blame to the character. And then Joe Gomez, who was at one point his partner. Do you know anything about Joe Gomez, Bird? Because he's way outside my purview.
I did not. I thought he came across just as a nice, regular dude. It didn't seem like he pulled punches. He didn't bash anybody, but he told some dark things there and kind of shed light on what he could have been. He wasn't overly shocked, sadly, but I don't know anything at all hardly on Gomez.
Yeah, I thought he was fine, but yeah, no clue on him as a wrestler. Does anybody have an answer for a highlight other than Arn Anderson?
I thought what they showed, I never saw this before, but what they showed with this match at the beach
with
show.
Orndorff?
Was it? Yeah, with Orndorff. But his drop kicks was like, what the fuck? Jeez.
Yeah.
They were talking about how he trained with Kowalski and he's throwing those drop kicks. He couldn't be that bad.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say is one of our favorite lines in the chat is he didn't get all of it. And so he definitely didn't get all of it on those kicks. But I think at that time, too, if you really think back to that era, some of those guys, if they didn't take the people seriously, they probably just cashed their money and just let them. They weren't. I assumed he trained Killer Kowalski school, trained Triple H differently than him.
And you figure he'd be part of the power plan or something like that.
My biggest thing was like, if he was that bad of a wrestler, even if you think of Warrior, who wasn't always the best worker by some people's standards, once again, I would argue he's had some good matches with other good wrestlers, and even him and Hogan were able to cobble together a good match. But with all that said, early Warrior was a lot of squash matches. Goldberg was a lot of squash matches. Here, they're just putting him in real matches right away. That was just seemed to be dumb booking. Any thoughts there? Any other early comments from you, Josh?
I think you're absolutely right. As far as we talk about Bischoff trying to deflect blame, you can't put much of this on the guy himself because the whole idea from the outset was doomed to fail. The booking was terrible. Could he have been better? Yeah, but you got to know he's not good enough to put him in that spot. So there's plenty of blame to pass around, and it ain't all Rick Wilson.
But you're talking about Hulk Hogan's pole back then too.
Oh, of course. I was really impressed with how well Jimmy went in on him when he was just undressing him. Like, that's a side of Jimmy Hart we don't get all the time.
Yep.
And that was fun to see Jimmy just really giving it to him.
I put a little note on Jimmy went back heel, which we haven't really seen that style of heel in a while. And he kept saying, just plain old Rick, baby, just plain old Rick. And just really laid it into him.
I have a few thoughts here, which is this has Hulk Hogan written all fucking over it. One, he just wanted to bring him in to beat it. He couldn't build him up enough to beat him. He ends up losing to the Taskmaster right before Hogan gets involved with those guys. Hart's involved. I did hear the preview episode for Cornette, and when he talked about Jimmy Hart, he was like, they had to really hype him up to say anything negative about anyone. But you are right, Bird. Long time since we've seen really full heel Jimmy Hart. But they had to have sold him on the idea that this is the only way to relaunch the character a different way or something like that. Because I couldn't see, unless Hogan just really spiced them up on it, him being that nasty. But this just has Hogan's blueprint all over it. And then right after the Warrior comes back, that is when his career ultimately ends there. So it's hard not to put all of that together. And it's also hard not to see from my lens. And I'm not a Hogan hater. I generally like Hogan more than I don't. But I also think some of the Hogan bullshit is funny. And from my standpoint, I think Hogan thought he made Warrior. And I think in this case, he thought he could make another Warrior and very clearly say what you want about the guy. But even if you can't pinpoint it, there's a reason why that character connected to a lot of people. And you can say the paint, you can say the theme music, you can say this, you can say that. But ultimately, he connected with people and they tried to do something to an audience that wasn't really a Warrior audience even. And it didn't connect. And we've seen a lot of other things, I think, try to be more similar to the Warrior than not. And nothing's really landed that way, except for Sting, maybe. But any thoughts there from you, Bird, on just what was really going on here? Or do you want to place the blame anywhere from your side of things? Or any thoughts on how this was all put together?
Kind of Derek said, you can point the finger in a lot of ways. Can't blame it on him. Again, you're basing it on Warrior's charisma, which is out of the world. This guy didn't seem to have a lot of charisma, even though he came as a dancer, knew that kind of, you'd think he'd have a little something a little more shaky and flashy than he did.
I don't know what you wanted to see.
But as far as that goes, he was just kind of rocking a hard place against Hogan as far as that whole deal. There we go. So we're throwing them all out there.
Yeah, so I thought they don't really get into his childhood, but obviously if you go into Dick dancing, I don't imagine it was all gravy.
Yeah.
They mentioned the Wes Harrison coach who kind of looked like he should be on Chris Hansen.
Yeah.
And they don't say what he's the coach of. He's just a coach. I don't think, right? He wasn't coaching him in wrestling. They're just like his coach. And I'm like, coach of what? Dick dancing? But anyway, I go both ways. Here we go again on this Eric Henderson guy, because I thought he was entertaining. He's obviously a little flamboyant. There's no way they didn't clang swords at some point. I'd maybe like to hear a little more on that. Josh, any thoughts of the Dick dancing career of Rick Wilson?
I did think about it a whole lot. No, I did not. So no, not a ton of Dick dancing thoughts. I will say, going back to his buddy there, though, I really enjoyed the fact that he just freely offered up for no great reason that he his pants. He was really proud that they tied one on that night.
What did he just show?
Yes.
I think he did.
Oh, if this is one thing, this should really put it on the top for me.
Yeah, me either way. I guess with the piss, you've been there before, but
no, I mean, who amongst us hasn't, right?
I'm more of a barfer, but
I will say, like Derek said, his buddy was through the episode, he would just get amped up more, and what a total character, and he was very enjoyable, but he was out there definitely. And he made a comment I know Real was going to laugh about because it's a money comment. They said, oh, we drove 2 hours and only would make $100 a show. And I'm thinking, $19.95, that's okay for that level, maybe not. But,
Bird, how can I get these rates now? He's got the inflation calculator out. So, yeah, I think there's two quotes of the episode, and one is definitely the 6'4" and hung to the floor. His dancing name was Rio. It seemed like it was a cross between like a jungle man, and his initial character was maybe like a jungle warrior, but then I think he also had the Conan vibe going. I thought it was very funny listening to the Dick dancing leaders just saying how classy they were and what the high concept thought of this Dick dancing was going to be. So those were maybe some of my highlights. The quote from Arn was, he was a Dick dancer in Boston, Massachusetts, and we were having a wrestling match, and like, I didn't need no Dick dancing, I needed a wrestler or something. A lot of these episodes, like we mentioned last episode, we didn't get a lot of Terry Runnels, so it was almost out of place. We didn't get a lot of Arn, but one, they wrestled each other, so that's relevant. And then two, he's just a highlight here. Arn Anderson, thoughts from you, Bird?
What you see is what you get. I think we were all just busting out on the couch. I didn't expect that, and it was just fantastic. He was like, basically, this guy's a piece of trash, and I had to wrestle him. That's my honest opinions. I'm not going to be mean, but I'm going to be straight up, and I think that's what we got with Arn.
Any thoughts from you there, Tom?
Yeah, like what Bert said, Arn was pretty much saying he sucked ass without saying so. His conversation with Paul Orndorff after the match, they just looked at each other like, wow, how did you survive that? I thought that was pretty funny. We'll go into this later. I thought his wife was a pretty good character. I didn't know that she would be that normal for him based on his lifestyle.
Question for you, Josh. Me and Tom did put a lot of thought into this, and we had a full conversation this morning. Had you ever heard the term Dick dancing before, or where did this come from?
I did share an office with Bono for a while. No, that was the first that I'd ever heard the term Dick dancer. So yeah, it was new territory for me, oddly enough.
I feel like maybe I've heard it casually before. He couldn't have invented it, but definitely is not something I committed to memory the way I have now. Bird, when was Dick dancing invented?
Arn's kind of a Southern guy, like a couple of us, but that's new to me, so that took me for a loop.
I thought maybe it was like what ice box for you guys, or a basket of fries, Dick dancing, something like that. I thought it was interesting. We did get Sinister Minister actually came out and said he thought it was WCW's fault. And he thought this guy was almost a piece of shit. Talked to him. He wasn't a bad guy. I thought it was really weird that the Warrior and in the Independents had put him over because it seemed like something that would have really bothered the Warrior. That was pretty interesting to me. We're going to get a lot of Orndorff this episode, but we've seen so many people cheer heels at this point in time that at that time that would have been a bigger deal than it is now. But yeah, I don't know. I think in this, before we get to the darker side of where this lands, any other thoughts from any of you on just the overall wrestling career of what this was?
I thought you could have put him in 1985 and he could have been decent. I think he was old fashioned by that time, even though he looked good looking dude. He was in good shape, obviously, but again, he's a cheap knockoff of Warrior, but I think he could have been okay and maybe a smaller setup rather than, hey, you're on WCW TV already, go do your thing, and he didn't.
But I think there was a match was that him and the guy who played Adam Baum at one point, and then also it's like a Sean Stasiak to me, maybe without the pedigree, but a lot of those guys didn't hit. Name a guy, Chuck Palumbo. He could have had a career,
Hammer.
but what's that?
Van Hammer.
Mike Awesome. Just
Mike,
obviously
Mike
he's had
Awesome
better
in ECW
matches.
was pretty decent though.
Yeah, that was my bird jab of the episode. Okay, so I've got a question for you guys here. We don't get Susie Squires, or it's S-U-C-I. I assume it's Susie Squires. That's her stripper name, I assume too, question mark. She was a stripper at the Gold Club in Atlanta, which is famous for the old WCW exploits. I think that's the Who Wants the Sex Matumbo strip club. I think there was a lot of NBA stories there. But my question, they talk about the statement is that he was hitting her. She pulled out the gun. He took it from her and put it in his mouth and shot her himself. I think, I do not know what happened, official prestige-ish position, but I think several seasons ago, this show would have at least asked the question, did Susie Squires shoot the Renegade? Question mark. Any thoughts on that story? Now, once again, with documentaries and stuff, they give you their side of it, so it can look very different than what real life is. But the way they describe this in this episode, I'm like, I have some questions here. Any thoughts from you there, Josh, on how that played out?
Not really that you didn't already just cover. Yeah, I had similar thoughts. It was like, what really transpired here seems a little weird, but hey, weird things happen. That's why this show exists. But yeah, it was definitely interesting circumstances for sure.
Yeah. Bird, your thoughts?
They just threw that right in our face, like out of nowhere with really no build. But I'm going to spin back a little bit. When they were talking to the ex, she got the cheating note and found out all about that. I wrote it down in my notes. I said, business was picked up here. Here we go.
Oh, yeah, I forgot
I was on board, and then it really picked up. But as far as there's a lot of questions. I didn't know exactly how. I knew he killed himself, apparently, but I didn't know a lot of details until they showed us here.
He was on copious amounts of drugs. She pulls out a gun. He pulls it out of her hand and directly into his mouth and shoots himself. That's that's a weird one to me. Courtney Love would be proud. Something else I noticed that wasn't mentioned, and I only started tying this together because, once again, I try not to listen to the Cornette stuff till after we record. So even what I saw of this episode was, I think, his pre-comments maybe. But he had mentioned in the Boss Man episode that doctor being tied to Benoit and them all being in Marietta, Georgia. And he's in Marietta, Georgia. And so to me, it's hard to believe that he might not have been tied up in some of the same stuff that some of the other guys were, just locationally and company-wise. It would make sense. So just a random.
The ex-wife said that he picked up all those bad habits, so you would imagine.
Yeah. It sounded like harder drugs, but I don't know what that doctor would have had access to or not. And I'm not saying that doctor specifically did. I'm just saying very coincidental within 2 weeks of each other. We're talking about 3 deaths in the same area of the country. I assume is Marietta just outside Atlanta? Is it a suburb of Atlanta? Anybody know? You guys would know better than me, but if you don't know, nobody knows. So yeah, I just thought that the only other thing I'd throw out there, if you want to comment on Bird, is we got a little bit of Party Marty. This seems to be the most sober Marty Jannetty I've ever seen, maybe.
I made a note that he was there and he's something else, and that was probably a better Marty. And we're basing that on a pretty rough bar the last 5, 10 years, because we've seen some rough Marty. But it was entertaining to see him there. I'm not sure if he really gave much insight or what I even believe of Marty at all, but I like having him on TV, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know that he provided any value
Yes.
other than my thought of this is the most sober I've seen him. How sober that is, unsure.
Yeah.
Tom, any other thoughts on the shooting, the death, Party Marty, any of that?
Yeah, I don't know how close Marty Jannetty was. They didn't even show anything with him and Renegade together, so he was just there. I would say this, going back to the funeral part, when the ex-wife was saying when the stripper showed up, and she was saying like, and she showed up wearing this, and everybody turned around and looked at her like that. And then she talks about, I read the police report. I thought they were leading us to be conspiracy part and all that, but they just glazed over that. So I thought that was on this point.
And I wonder sometimes, we talked last episode, Josh, about how, because of the criticism of the show, they've shied away from some of those darker themes. And sometimes I wonder if this is the closest Dark Side episode we saw, but it maybe was missing that part of the fastball, but still throw a 96 maybe. But any thoughts on that, or just wrapping up the episode?
Yeah, I thought that they could have spent a little bit more time with that aspect of it. Like I said, there wasn't a lot of build. It just came in, boom, they touched on it a couple minutes and then out. And yeah, I feel like that could have been a bigger, deeper part of the story. But even with that, it was still a really good episode. But yeah, I can see. I wasn't aware that had been increased criticism about how they were approaching the episodes. But I could see that. Yeah, they just glossed a little bit. You would like to see maybe a deeper dive, a little bit harder hitting, if there's anything there. Maybe there wasn't anything there. Maybe they looked and that was it, and they just let it go. But all things considered, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, next week we've got
his inner Bono wanting to go deeper, harder hitting.
Yeah, all of our talking points are going to be thrown into question after this episode. Don't show this episode to Arn. So next week, Paul Orndorff, your thoughts, Bird?
I'm ready for this one. It ended fairly dark as far as, I'm not sure what you guys know. I think there was some either documentary or something how his family didn't treat him, so in the end of his life wasn't great. But again, he was ultimate tough guy. I think we should have some real good stories early on to what led up the Hogan years in the WCW. So I'm looking forward to where they go with that one.
Tom, you had a theory on him this morning, and just in general, do you want to throw out the story you heard?
Yeah, I remember growing up, I was a fan of Mr. Wonderful, that I heard that Hogan stole that cup to the ear gimmick from him, but who knows where that really came from. And like you said, that probably so many other wrestlers did that.
He gave me the first push that put his hand to his ear, for crying out loud. But I'm sure Hogan put his zest on it or whatever. Any thoughts on Mr. Wonderful from you, Josh?
I'm just looking forward to seeing what all is in there, because the things that Bird just talked about, I hadn't really thought a lot about Mr. Wonderful in a long time. So obviously I watched him when I was a little kid, but I didn't follow his story after he went out of the limelight. So much like the Renegade story, a lot of, I think, what we're going to see is something that will be a newer story to me. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's in store.
Yeah, and I feel like for me, and I think me and you are pretty close today, Josh, he's just a little bit, I've seen matches with him and I went back and watched the old WrestleManias, but he's just a little bit outside of my age range, you know what I mean? To me, kind of like almost like a Dynamite Kid, or
that's Blaha. So
who was it? I forget his real name, and people are gonna shit at me for this. Is it Fancy Boy Chris Adams, or what's the guy from last season that was like Real's partner?
Oh,
isn't it Chris Adams?
Or what? Chris Adams, but I forgot what they called his nickname first.
Yeah, but anyway, Orndorff has got more gravitas than that, obviously, from his WWE time or WWF time. But I imagine he's probably a little bit like some of those guys, like Dynamite Kid, like the surly, tough guys who took some knocks and that kind of stuff. That's kind of the vibe I'm expecting. I prefer the weird Dick Danson conspiracy vibes of the show, but we'll see what kind of wrestling history we get next week.
It'll be interesting because those guys back then, other than the big names that you know of, like Hogan, their background and all that, I don't know anything about Mr. Wonderful outside of wrestling. I just remember, like Bert said, his last years, he looked real rough at times too. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and to me, he's kind of like Zbyszko. I'd put him maybe but with a bigger WWE run, but like less of a WCW run, or like I'd put Mongo McMichael in those categories. They're just guys that are tough guys or big mouths, but never were really my thing.
I think he's well respected, especially at that age, wrestlers. And his 84 to 86 run, of course, he was tied into Hogan. Those crowds were just stupid big.
Yeah,
I think that carried him quite a while.
I definitely put him above those three for that reason, but I think he's obviously not quite a Piper level in my book, but certainly above the ones I mentioned there. Josh, thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate it, man. Hopefully it was a good first time for you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Let me crash the party.
We
boost the ratings for us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, anything we can get from that Arkansas demographic, hogs and otherwise. We thought we already had the hogs covered, but hopefully you bring a few more in for us. We have the season finale at House of the Dragons this Sunday, and we will be back with more wrestling next week. See you then.
Guys, that was great.
All right, fellas. Good talking to you. Thanks for joining, Josh.
Yeah, you bet.
Later, dudes.
See you, fellas.